Story 1. Face your challenges. Always be kind to yourself. Practice gratitude. Exercise regularly. Maintain a healthy diet. The hardest part is finding the motivation to start and the faith to keep going, even when you are doing the right work and still feel unwell. Story 2. I actually turned to books quite a bit. This was about 8 to 9 years ago, but I started reading a lot, and it made me feel productive even if they were fiction because I was still advancing a skill. Story 3. I started focusing on small wins, like making my bed and finishing a walk. I slowly replaced "I failed again" with "I tried today." Over time, the weight became lighter, not gone, just easier to carry. Story 4. I did everything opposite to what I wanted to do. I showered every day. I went for 30 to 45-minute walks every day without music, just fresh air, and smiled at strangers. I forced myself to text at least one person who I used to be friends with or still was someone who made my life better, just to reach out. All of these things were very challenging. People who have never experienced depression do not understand how the most basic daily tasks can take all your energy and will. It did not happen right away for me, but after about a month of that, I started feeling better. The clouds broke. I believe the single best thing I ever did for my depression was volunteering. Focusing on someone besides myself and seeing that I could make a difference in other people's lives made me feel really connected to the world. Story 5. Finding out that it was a side effect of my anxiety helped me. Since I started managing my anxiety, the depression aspect is no longer noticeable. Story 6. Mushrooms and sunlight. I am not joking. Nature and psychedelics have rewired my brain more than any antidepressant ever could. Story 7. I have always felt like something was not connecting in my brain. I have had a wonderful life surrounded by great people who only wanted the best for me. And yet I have always been miserable and unable to explain it. Years of therapy and exercise with supportive people did not change anything. The only thing that has ever made me feel normal is the antidepressant fluoxetine. Within 24 hours, I felt normal and able to live with myself. It does not make sense because it is meant to be a gradual improvement, but for me, it was almost immediate. I have tried coming off it and I returned to my old self, but when I am back on it, I feel normal within a week. I do not think I will ever come off it, and I'm okay with that because now I can truly love and enjoy my life and family. Story 8. Aging, believe it or not. I spent a significant part of my childhood in untreated depression, but around the time I turned 30, my brain chemistry shifted. It didn't go away all at once. It slowly ebbed over several years. Now I may have 1 or 2 mildly bad days a year, but since I know they will pass, I can endure them. Story 9. I escaped my abusive home life and moved to a completely new state, where I began a very different life. It helped immensely. Story 10. Going outside every day for a minimum of 15 to 30 minutes, even in minus 30 degrees, eating healthier, getting sunlight, sleeping before 9:30 p.m., and using checklists that direct towards goals, also known as stepping stones, are important. These checklists can be detailed, down to simple tasks like putting on socks or logging into software. Achievements provide a significant boost of dopamine. Story 11. Therapy, a new job, and new friends. I made new friends because I moved to a different city, not because there was anything wrong with my existing friends. All in all, it took about 3 years to get over it. Story 12. Therapy with a licensed psychologist once a week. Meeting with a psychiatrist every month. Reduced over time when improvement was seen, who managed my medication for a couple of years. I started focusing more on my health and needs rather than the expectations of others. I discarded my life timeline and accepted that it wouldn't go according to plan. I have been therapist-free since 2014 and medication-free in 2014, although I went back on medication for a couple of years during the pandemic and I am now off again. I am better at recognizing the early signs now and I don't give in like I used to. I don't turn to sad music, movies, books, binge watching, sleeping excessively, or snacking too much. Instead, I reach out to people for social activities, make sure to exercise, drink water, stay off the internet, drive to places I like, such as a favorite park or coffee shop, deep clean something, or take a long shower. I do various things now to get ahead of it, and it works, knock on wood. Story 13. Medications to stabilize my mood. distancing myself from people and family who disturb my peace, and keeping busy with activities I enjoy have been helpful. Sometimes I still experience depressive episodes, but I rarely feel suicidal anymore. They are easier to manage now that I recognize them for what they are, just episodes. Story 14. Lifestyle changes such as finding new hobbies, keeping myself busy, and doing things that made me proud have been essential, but most importantly, it was my mindset. During my worst times, even when I felt terrible, I would start my journal entries by saying, "Today was a good day." I would then list the positive aspects of that day, even the small joys like showering, grocery shopping, or talking to a friend. When I experienced negative thoughts, I forced myself to stop spiraling and repeat affirmations in my mind, such as, "Everything is okay. This is life, and there is still so much good." Felt a bit like fake it till you make it for a long time. However, one day I realized that stopping the negative thoughts and the spiraling had become natural and genuine, and I couldn't help but feel proud of myself. Although it's still a struggle at times, applying that technique to my thinking pattern has helped me tremendously. Story 15. I went to the gym. At first, it was to get in shape, but then I noticed how much better my mental health became after physical activity. Story 16. I believe everyone experiences tough days. What helped me was focusing on myself and taking care of my well-being, which included eating well and exercising. The first day is really hard, the first week is also challenging, but after a month, things become easier. Story 17. Focus on smaller units of time and make them count. Together, these small units add up. Achieving focus can seem to require smaller, less overwhelming increments. Often, I would lie in bed knowing the day would be long and challenging. However, the simple act of wiggling each toe, with the goal of placing my feet on the ground and lifting my body when the toes were all wiggled, helped me begin walking into the day. Story 18. Dialectical behavior therapy has transformed my life after 2 rounds of it. This skills-based approach focuses on applying logic to emotions and encourages confrontation of ingrained thinking patterns. While I still experience sadness and stress, I am now able to cope much better. I can recognize when I am feeling a justified emotion as opposed to being triggered by past trauma, and that has made all the difference. Story 19. Antidepressants and a change of job. I was working in a call center when my dad passed away from cancer. Previous family deaths had not been grieved properly, leading to a mini breakdown and depression taking over. I went to the doctor and was fortunate to find a general practitioner who understood and listened. I started taking medication and changed my job. Story 20. Therapy, microdosing, new kittens, and a great deal of hard work and constant self-evaluation. It is important to understand that depression is not simply being sad. It is a condition that requires treatment and can return. Story 21. Wellbutrin, weekly therapy, a new job, improved sleep hygiene, reduced alcohol and coffee intake, and ensuring I have ample human contact with people who I care for and who care for me. Story 22. I stopped eating carbohydrates. I'm naturally a bit gloomy, but 30 years of depression lifted when I eliminated carbohydrates and processed foods. The concrete blocks on my ankles disappeared, and I was better able to overcome difficult moments. Story 23. I received transcranial magnetic stimulation therapy. I experienced horrific side effects from antidepressants, and my therapist recommended trying it because it has no side effects. Initially, I thought it sounded like a scam, but I was desperate. I underwent the treatment and have not experienced any severe episodes of depression since. It has been 2 years. I do feel sad occasionally due to specific situations, but that deep feeling of dread and failure has disappeared, and I have a renewed interest in life. Story 24. Better living through medications, the right ones. You and your doctor may have to try a few combinations, but once you find the right one, you will regain your life. Story 25. I wouldn't say I'm not depressed. Major depressive disorder often tries to creep in along with its companion, anxiety. However, with therapy and the right medications, I've been managing much better on a new combination for about a month now. My baseline mood is higher than I've felt in a long time. It took a long time and multiple clinics, including voluntary inpatient care, to ensure the prescriptions were correct. There was a lot of trial and error, and while I know it's far from over, I am finally able to make some forward momentum. Story 26. The reason I felt depressed was due to a mentally and financially abusive relationship with a man who was a prescription drug addict. I was made redundant from a job I didn't like but needed for survival. I worked many hours yet remained chronically broke and isolated from everyone while trying to complete my master's degree while working full-time. This situation marked the end of a series of terrible employment experiences in an industry characterized by bullying and illegal practices. I had reached the highest level I could in my department at a couple of different places. I relocated a considerable distance to accept a job offer I had previously declined, even though the pay was significantly less. I left my ex-husband and all the baggage that came with him and realized I could live comfortably on that salary on my own. I engaged in a lot of training for my new role, which was enjoyable and allowed me to work outside. I finished my thesis and met the most amazing man, who makes all my dreams come true. With that came a social life and the ability to enjoy life. I still experience flashbacks and bad days, but they do not last. I have ultimate support from my husband, who helps me through anything and is an incredible father to our son. My career is thriving, and we are financially stable, so I no longer worry about making rent or going hungry. I still sometimes feel guilty about buying anything for myself, and I occasionally mourn the friendships I lost due to my ex, which I cannot regain. I grieve for the decade of my life I lost and the missed opportunity of owning my own home. I need reminders of how much I have achieved and how far I have come since then, including a love for rock music and a wonderful community of friends I am blessed to have. Story 27. I made several changes. I changed my diet. I began daily exercise. I moved from a negative environment to a positive one. I left behind unhealthy friends. I abandoned habits that were bringing me down, such as obsessing over politics. I practice gratitude regularly. I work on maintaining a positive mindset. Much of this is about mindset. I had to let go of the identity associated with being depressed, disabled, and having a lifelong chronic illness, and instead adopt an identity focused on health and thriving. Story 28. I treated my healing like a marketing campaign. I muted the noise, built daily habits, asked for help, and created more than I consumed. Story 29. I wish I knew. I wanted to die every single day as far back as I can remember. Then one day in 2020, I woke up and realized something was different. I hadn't thought about dying in a while, and I wish I could explain it. I was even on antidepressants at some point. The brain is a mystery. Story 30. Being myself. For so long, I felt like a phony because I was living the life that others wanted me to live, mainly my family and religious community. I stopped pretending to be someone I'm not, and I started being myself and doing things I enjoy. While it can be lonely at times, it feels good. I didn't cut anyone off. I just stopped playing the role people wanted me to play. Story 31. Therapy, money, self-reflection, accountability, and pretending until I succeeded, along with leaving the place where my depression began. Story 32. I got really depressed from being chronically online and having most of my friends as virtual connections. We did have video chats, but it still wasn't in person. I found that when I came back to reality, it made things better. That was just my experience. I know many people who are happy and function well in that situation. Story 33. Honestly, mushrooms. I used to constantly have suicidal thoughts and feelings of dread and worthlessness. I microdosed for 3 months straight and occasionally took a couple of grams on weekends. When I stopped taking them, I felt content. I didn't feel sad anymore or down for no reason. Story 34. I am focusing on medication, achieving my goals, therapy, and surrounding myself with supportive people. Story 35. I probably didn't give the best advice. I was extremely depressed at one point when my partner of 14 years left me right as we started planning to get married. I was devastated. I immersed myself in my work, travel, and hiking. Honestly, I buried myself in these activities to keep my mind busy. I became a workaholic and wanted to become someone she would regret leaving. Somewhere along the way, I stopped caring about her and ended up being happier. I still work a lot, but I enjoy it, so I don't see it as a bad thing for me. However, I know many people do better with mental breaks. Story 36. I stopped taking Adderall, and 2 weeks later my depression went away. I had been using Adderall for about 5 to 6 years. Story 37. I was living in a complex web of lies. As soon as that snapped, I was able to chart a course back to relatively good mental health. Being dishonest with myself caused a lot of trauma to both myself and others. Story 38. Mediation every morning. Exercise every day. Start paying attention to your thoughts and where they go. Be gentle with yourself. Story 39. Honestly, I didn't. I just have better people in my life now, so I'm happy and loved. I also just started taking Busper for anxiety, and it seems to be helping. Story 40. Make self-care a priority. Get the rest your body needs, exercise, stretch, and eat food that is good for you. Spend time with people you enjoy being with. Say no often. Story 41. I quit a job that drained me mentally and physically. My new position pays a bit less, but my mental health has significantly improved. Story 42. I had a fun childhood. My dad tried to harm me. I developed severe health issues and faced abuse within the family. That was before getting married, when my wife had a late miscarriage, left, and passed away. Therapy did wonders, particularly eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I had struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder for years before that. I started meditating, which helped a lot. I also keep a gratitude journal and make daily entries. I read, hike, and travel. Little by little, I emerged. I still have the occasional off day, but am able to stay content through this and the relationships in my life. Story 43. 7 grams of mushrooms. This was accidental as I was unaware my scale wasn't calibrated properly. My intent was 3.5 grams, but my scale was about half off. I weighed a nickel afterward, and it was 2.53 grams, which should be around 5 grams. This experience addressed what years of medication and therapy could not. Story 44. I went to therapy, got sober, adopted a dog, exercised, and read many books about trauma and depression. I recommend Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It, and The Body Keeps the Score. I can't remember the authors' names. That helped alleviate most of my struggles, but I'm not sure if they will ever fully go away. Story 45. I think it's because I gave up on trying to get my dream job. My passion for it faded, and I surrendered to life. I don't have the fight in me anymore. I'm too tired. Now I get more sleep than ever, and I'm doing okay for the most part. I bury myself in hiking trails and save money to move out of the difficult environment that is Portland. Story 46. I engage in therapy, stay on my medications, and develop outside interests. I volunteer for various groups, help people in my building, and do a lot of reading. I try to avoid dwelling on the negative experiences from my past and let them remain where they belong. When I feel overwhelmed, I get up and go for a walk. I stop at a coffee shop to grab something to eat or have a slice of pizza. Even a candy bar ensures I interact with another person. Walking helps, and I have a supplement nutrition assistance program card. Several museums in Boston offer free entry with this card, so I take advantage of that. I also volunteer for community cleanups and at a local historic home, supporting a group that aims to increase affordable housing in the region. I have cut off all contact with my family, as they were the source of much of my pain. They were never going to change, and I grew tired of expecting anything different. I felt upset when no one called me during my hospital stay. My therapist reminded me that this behavior was typical of my mother, so I removed her number and deleted my entire family from social media. You should treat your work as if it is your full-time job. Story 47. Changing my thoughts and escaping the mental fog. I was deeply depressed and suicidal. It felt like I was trapped in a dark pit that I couldn't escape. The negativity had such a strong pull. The recurring negative thoughts and heaviness dragged me down. Now, I am one of the happiest, most optimistic, and joyful people you will ever meet. I used to view life as a struggle, one problem after another to solve. Now, I no longer see life as a problem to be solved. I viewed myself in the same way. I was a problem that needed solving, like an endless construction site. I felt there was something wrong with me. I felt behind, ugly compared to others, and unworthy of this life. Now, I see being alive as a privilege. I wake up every day thinking, thank God I'm alive. I've been gifted another day. Isn't it a wonder, a miracle that I get to walk on earth and breathe? I have changed tremendously. The young, depressed, and suicidal version of myself would be so proud of who I have become. Story 48. I quit drinking. When I quit drinking, I didn't think it had anything to do with my depression. However, about 2 or 3 years after I quit, I realized I wasn't suffering from depression anymore. Of course, I still experience feelings of sadness, anger, unhappiness, loneliness, and lack of motivation. But these are discrete moods, not conditions. Hallelujah. Story 49. Medication is the most influential factor for me. Therapy helps a lot. Getting away from the people and places where it was easy to revert to my old mental habits has also been beneficial. However, medication has removed so much of what was making my life difficult that it feels like a significant advantage. Story 50. Therapy and menopause. It feels to me like estrogen amplified whatever I was experiencing. After factoring in 10 to 15 years of practice in understanding my emotions and recognizing triggers, I have become quite solid now. When I start feeling bad, I shift into self-care mode. I focus on good food, exercise, sunshine, sleep, and surround myself with only positive, uplifting forms of entertainment and people. I avoid news and sad movies. It seems simple, almost silly, but it effectively breaks the momentum of any downward spiral and allows me to regain control. Story 51. I dislike that the suggestions people give to feel better, which sounds so silly, actually work. However, you need to be in a certain mindset to start doing those things in the first place. I will probably experience depression in some form for the rest of my life, but I go through different periods where I can manage it better than others. This time, it got really bad, the worst it has been in over a decade, and I went back on medication. I tried a new one that I hadn't used before, and thankfully, it started working pretty quickly. I then made it my goal to go outside every day. Not only did it help break up the time I spent inside doing nothing, but being outdoors is also very beneficial. I started by taking a short walk to a nearby lake. A nice park or any outdoor area with pleasant scenery works too. I would sit there, either listening to music or observing nature, taking in all the sounds and grounding myself in life itself. It was generally low energy since it was close by and I just had to sit instead of being in my room. Changing that environment makes a significant impact, even if you don't think it does. It helps break up the painful passing hours and minutes that once felt torturous and never-ending. That started helping, and now I've progressed to daily walks on top of that. It helps that the walks I take are along a path by the water, making for a pleasant experience instead of walking on a busy street with nothing special happening. I am doing much better now after being consistent with that. I make my alone time enjoyable, without the pressures of being a contributing member of society. I am simply alive, participating in life in the universe. I observe the birds around me, how the water flows, and the sun shining on the surface of the lake. I allow myself to witness and be a part of that beauty. It is healing from within. Even if I feel isolated in society, I am not alone in life and the energy of being alive in this universe. I will always have a place in the universe, even if I feel disconnected from people. Story 52. Look into transcranial magnetic stimulation therapy if you are fortunate enough to be employed with insurance and have tried at least 2 medications. Story 53. I refused to use medication for a long time. I told myself I should be able to control my depression. My attitude was that I didn't have a cut, a sore, or anything physically broken. It was all in my head. I was embarrassed to talk to my doctor about it. One day, my best friend said to me, "If you had a heart problem, would you take medication to live?" My answer was, "Of course." She responded, "You need help to live." I went to my doctor and talked to her about my depression. The statistics of people who take medication for depression or anxiety are very high. I immediately started medication and have felt better ever since. Of course, I still have moments, but it doesn't seem hopeless. Story 54. Therapy, along with antidepressants, can be incredibly beneficial. It is amazing how discussing issues and being guided toward various realizations and perspectives can help you return to a healthy state. Story 55. I was depressed for years and tried various medications that made me feel worse. I was accidentally prescribed a subtherapeutic dose of propranolol, specifically 10 milligrams twice a day. Turns out I have test anxiety, which is strange because I love tests. I seem to have the symptoms of test anxiety even when I am not being tested. I get a nervous feeling when I take a test. I know it's a peculiar interpretation. Regardless, I am no longer depressed or anxious, and I feel as happy as can be on 20 milligrams of propranolol each day. I experience no side effects, just slightly steadier hands. I previously took metoprolol, but it didn't work. It was the wrong beta blocker. The specifically propranolol prescribed off-label. My doctor prescribes it for blood pressure even though I don't need it, so that insurance will cover it. Took a decade to realize that it wasn't depression but rather anxiety. I was misinterpreting my feelings. Since I didn't feel anxiety, my brain transformed it into crippling depression. The brain can be quite complicated. Story 56. I'm still feeling a bit depressed, but here's what I did to make it more manageable. Establish a routine by going to sleep and waking up at the same time every day. Reduce added sugars. Spend time outside your home, even if just for a few minutes. Consider medication with a doctor's prescription. Seek therapy. If budget is a concern, start with online chat services. I began that way and eventually moved on to a professional. Engage in physical exercise. Gradually incorporate your old hobbies back into your life, such as reading and listening to music. Story 57. Context. I was diagnosed with dysthymia in my sophomore year, though I had symptoms from the end of 8th grade to my freshman year. In no way am I advocating for drug use, but during the summer of my sophomore year, I took lysergic acid diethylamide. I was interested in the healing properties, not because I wanted to party. I had done extensive research and read that it can be healing and has helped people with mental illnesses. I thought, let's just see what happens. One warm evening, I ingested about 2 tabs and awaited the effects. 30 to 45 minutes later, a wave of emotions hit me. I felt as if everything I had felt over the last few years was about to come out. For so long, I had yearned to be understood, to be accepted, to be enough. I wanted to feel, to be involved in life, and to be confident in myself. In that moment, lysergic acid diethylamide showed me that everything I ever needed was within myself and within reach. The resentment I felt for my parents because of their strict rules transformed into compassion and understanding. I realized, I get it. It's because they believe in me. Every sad thought I had was transformed into an opportunity to look beyond myself. Instead of seeking to be understood, I wanted to understand others, to be open, to be vulnerable, to share my thoughts and ideas, to create, to love people, to be kind, to be assertive, to connect. Life became a vast canvas, and I could do anything I chose to do. I began to cry tears of happiness. Life felt renewed. I felt meaning and passion radiating from within me. Back then, I wanted to give up. I felt lost and alone when that wasn't the case. Life seemed dull and heavy, and it felt like nothing I did would amount to anything. In an instant, my perspective shifted. I wanted to be involved in my life with all the passion I could muster, to honor my life. Even if I don't change the world, I will be happy that I chose to persevere. If life has no inherent meaning, then I might as well give it meaning. Story 58. I experienced a lot of therapy, some of which I had to figure out myself. Having my first job and receiving paychecks also helped. Story 59. I stopped smoking weed, exercised more, made new friends, and met some women. It's strange how when I mention this, some people tell me I wasn't depressed. Not everyone experiences things the same way. Story 60. Depression is a lifelong condition. You do not simply become not depressed anymore. You learn how to manage it with medication and lifestyle changes. Story 61. Most people do not realize the true origin of depression. They believe it primarily comes from a chemical imbalance, which is true to some extent. However, what causes those chemical imbalances? Biology plays a significant role. Additionally, consider your upbringing. Reflect on your childhood and the experiences that impacted you while growing up. This is the foundation that must be addressed to effectively confront your depression. Unfortunately, many individuals turn to medication and overlook the environmental factors that also influence their biology, which prevents them from truly feeling better. Story 62. Antidepressants, a stable job in my field of study, and meaningful ambitions outside of work have been essential for me. In my case, those ambitions include being a gigging musician and practicing regularly. Music has had the largest impact on my health. Story 63. I distanced myself from drama and established boundaries. I am often told I am a bad person, but I recognize that I was indeed a bad person in the past, so their opinion hasn't changed. I just hear it less frequently. Doing nice things for others when I can, having conversations with those who seem to be having a tough day or struggling, giving advice to those who ask for it, and listening to those who need to vent helps me feel less alone. The human condition is not one of always being happy or always being sad. Constant sadness can be depressing, while constant happiness can lead to manic behavior. Balance is essential. I appreciate all my friends who tried to lift me out of my slump and those who gave me space. I made a conscious effort to accept invitations and not isolate myself. I believe that having a pet or being part of a community is beneficial. Good luck on your journey, and may you find peace. Story 64. Surviving means not ending things. It involves using coping mechanisms and replacing unhealthy ones with healthy alternatives. Story 65. I started an ADHD medication last year, and it seemed to enhance the effects of my antidepressants. I'm no longer in a constant state of despair, but it is still difficult not to feel depressed in modern times. Story 66. I overcame depression, and once I was able to create a better lifestyle with exercise, I can avoid it happening again. I am also more proactive in seeking medical care if I think it might occur again to prevent it. Story 67. Why pay $160 for just a 30-minute session when I can get a zip for $150 and have many therapy sessions? Marijuana helps me let go of unnecessary stress and increases my self-awareness. Story 68. Therapy and medication can go a long way. Therapy can provide you with the tools to manage your depression, while medication can alleviate some of the symptoms, giving you time to learn how to navigate the issues. Remember, it's okay to not be okay. Give yourself some grace. Story 69. Finally, I sat down and admitted that I was depressed. I went to see a specialist and was prescribed the right medication. Now I am much less angry and sad, feeling more relaxed, and I am actually enjoying my hobbies again. Story 70. I began working out, eating healthy, and maintaining good hygiene. Being clean, fit, and healthy boosts your confidence, and caring for yourself is therapeutic. I also started spending time outdoors and engaging in activities with others. Story 71. This has been over the span of 4 to 5 years. I took some mushrooms. Please note, I have only ever microdosed responsibly. I started therapy for a bit after that and took some antidepressants for a couple of years, taking the highest dose I could in the morning and at night until they stopped working. I took more mushrooms during that time and learned I was potentially autistic, getting diagnosed shortly after. It took 6 months and a few doctor appointments. I started to accommodate myself much more. I quit my awful job that was draining the life out of me and found one that pays over $6 more right off the bat, with significantly less responsibility. I took more mushrooms and then found the courage to leave a terrible 5-year abusive relationship. I spent about a month keeping to myself and doing some shadow work, dealing with a lot of my own childhood trauma and relationship trauma during that time. My current boyfriend asked me to dinner shortly after, and life has been great since. My quality of life has skyrocketed now that I am learning to accommodate myself, speak up for myself, respect myself, and stop letting others walk all over me. I learned that I needed to take my own life by the reins and pull hard in the opposite direction it was going. Story 72. The right medications, along with structure and positive discipline from attending college and achieving good grades, significantly boosted my confidence. When I first started college, I was jittery and nervous, but not anymore. Story 73. Therapy. Write down or say out loud 10 things you are grateful for every day. They can be deep or as simple as, I'm grateful for being able to breathe. Set small, manageable goals and be kind to yourself, whether you reach them or not. Story 74. Workouts, therapy, and time have been essential for my well-being. Being active has improved my functionality, and having a fantastic body is an added bonus. While extensive therapy did not solve all my problems, it helped me understand myself better and find effective coping strategies. Over time, some wounds have naturally healed. I wish I could claim there is an exact solution, but I believe it is a combination of all these elements. Story 75. I stopped being around people who abused me and reminded me of my old life. When you are depressed, you may think you are to blame, but it is important to consider the systems and the people around you as well. Story 76. Electroconvulsive therapy was something I explored after being on various antidepressants for years without significant results. Although I experienced some good moments, nothing was lasting. After my third hospitalization, I was determined to find a more effective treatment. I found a psychiatrist who believed in this approach and I decided to pursue it. I underwent 10 or 12 treatments and, upon completion, I felt similar to before. However, with the close supervision of my psychiatrist, I gradually stopped taking medication. My mood improved dramatically, and within a short time, I was free of medication. That was 6 years ago, and I have not taken any psychiatric medication since. I no longer check in with my psychiatrist. While I have had difficult days, they have been manageable and brief. Even when my mom passed away in 2024, I maintained emotional stability. If medications are not effective, I highly recommend considering this treatment option. Story 77. I lost my job, and the cycle of failing to present myself well in job interviews put me into a downward spiral to the point where I felt it would be better to just die. I wasn't going to take my own life, but I had no motivation to function. What made it worse was that I couldn't tell my family. Their dismissive reactions to my feelings of depression only intensified my struggles. Eventually, after 8 months, I found a job. I was still depressed and felt like I wanted to die, but I tried my hardest to keep up and interact with others more than I ever had before. Over time, I no longer felt suicidal. There is no secret solution to overcoming that feeling. When you reach that point, you get tunnel vision, making it very difficult to see any way out other than death. You must either find someone who can help you escape that tunnel or do it yourself. My solution was to engage in activities I wouldn't normally pursue. One scene from a popular animated series helped me somewhat. I don't know what it was, but something about that scene felt cathartic. Story 78. That's the interesting part. Not anymore never happens. Personally, I have become numb to life in general. I wake up and find distractions in Pokemon Go and other small things. I still have down days, but they are fewer now. Story 79. I attended the Landmark Focus Forum, and it was more effective than a decade of therapy. Additionally, using that momentum to leave an abusive relationship and establish boundaries has greatly improved my mental health. It helps me concentrate on what I can control within myself and approach situations from a place that is no longer draining for me. Story 80. I left my toxic job, moved away from the city and country that depressed me, and finally removed some friends from my life. Sometimes you just need to clean your environment. Story 81. Therapy. I realized I was not the only one feeling that way and found a sense of community. When I was in a depressive state, I learned to not be too hard on myself for not getting things done or taking care of myself properly. I once read something that basically said there are no rules to life. We are all trying to survive. If you know you need to wash dishes but food is caked on and you can't rinse them off, run the dishwasher 3 times if that's what it takes to clean them. If you know you need to eat but can't get yourself to cook a meal, eat parts of a meal. Eating sliced cheese or lunch meat when you can't make a whole sandwich is better than nothing. I found the story I was talking about. Story 82. Learn to meditate. With enough practice, it can positively rewire your brain without having to depend on substances or medication. There is something incredible in the stillness. Story 83. Questioning relationships, changing friends, moving, quitting alcohol and cigarettes, and focusing on a job I enjoy have allowed me to naturally surround myself with better people. Everything else follows suit. Takes time. You must set aside your pride and take responsibility for certain things. Ultimately, progress happens quickly. Story 84. I was going through some personal challenges this time last year and was in a very dark place. With the support of friends, I visited a psychiatrist. I was committed to taking my medication on time and keeping up with my routine checkups. I feel significantly better now. Today, my city is under attack from extremists. I feel sad, angry, and scared, but not depressed. Something about war makes your instincts work differently, and you begin to feel only basic emotions. Complex feelings like emptiness and depression are pushed aside. I just want to survive and stand up against these aggressors. I think the near-death experience transformed my urge to end my life into a strong will to live no matter what. Story 85. I no longer care about what people say. I have become emotionally detached after experiencing a lot of abuse in my life. As a result, I tend to ignore others and don't pay attention to their opinions about me. Some people disapprove of my attitude, but I feel unable to change who I am. Story 86. I have a dog, and I'm getting forced to take walks. I'm talking to people and going to dog parks, watching dogs play and living in the moment. I'm also getting older and learning that feelings come and go. I have a chronic illness. After experiencing anger and depression, I am finding acceptance and learning to appreciate the small things, like smelling the roses. Story 87. I bought a wild Mustang from the government for $125, which completely changed my lifestyle. I had to gentle and train my feral horse, and in the process, I distanced myself from my toxic home life, developed a sense of self-worth, and landed my very first job at a sanctuary as a trainer. Disclaimer: I do not recommend buying a wild Mustang or any horse as a solution to your problems. I recommend identifying your passion, whatever it may be, no matter how unrealistic it might seem, and pursuing it. If you believe that taming a 1,000-pound feral animal is the right path for you, make sure to work with a skilled, ethical, and experienced trainer, or you may encounter new challenges in your life. Story 88. I moved to a place where I knew nobody. This approach may not work for everyone, but my depression stemmed from feeling trapped. I grew up on an island where everyone knew each other, and it was impossible to escape the drama or the negative comments about me. After moving, I had the space to process my feelings and heal, allowing me to reinvent myself. While I wouldn't say I'm completely free of depression, I improved quickly and am now much better mentally than I was before I relocated. No matter what I tried, I would not have been able to heal in that environment. However, please understand that this approach is not for everyone. I am an adventurous person and am comfortable doing things alone. A good friend of mine also struggles with depression, but doing what I did would likely make her feel even more isolated and worsen her situation. Story 89. Partly through counseling and partly through realizing this is just the way it is, I try to make the best of it. Some days are better than others. I tried several different medications, but they did little apart from causing side effects such as diarrhea, headaches, exhaustion, excessive sweating, and brain fog. Story 90. I cut off my toxic parents and finally went to therapy for my own problems. I have been attending therapy for years, but I always focused on the issues they caused. I did a lot of work on myself and reached a really good place. I was so happy and getting healthy. Then chronic illness hit me hard, and I found myself feeling depressed again. Story 91. I became very interested in self-improvement and discovered psychology. I fell in love with it, and now I want to pursue a PhD in psychology. I am currently attending school for this. I also started being assertive and stopped neglecting my needs and wants. At times, I can be selfish, but I am working on balancing that as well. Story 92. Therapy. I am 35 years old and have been on multiple antidepressants over the years without much improvement. My doctor recommended therapy when I visited them last October, and I was skeptical. However, after struggling for a few months at the beginning of the year, I decided to give it a try. I started in March, and this is honestly the happiest and most functional I have ever been. Story 93. Rigorous exercise and significant life changes, such as finding employment that promotes good mental health, helped me overcome previous drug addictions. The biggest factor was luck. I met someone very special, and now I feel it is my duty to be the best version of myself. Not for me, but for him. I was never able to do it for myself alone, but I can do it for us. I feel very grateful. I believe that gratitude is the most powerful antidote to depression. Story 94. Diet played a significant role for me. I cut out processed foods and started to feel better. While it may not be the case for everyone, it had a major impact on my health. Story 95. For me, it was a product called dehydroepiandrosterone. I have Addison's disease, which means I cannot produce cortisol, a hormone that is essential for producing other hormones. Dehydroepiandrosterone replaces one of the hormones I cannot produce. Lack of cortisol is life-threatening, but that is managed with hydrocortisone, which is provided by the National Health Service. They did not address dehydroepiandrosterone, but it is absolutely vital for me. I haven't experienced those dark thoughts in years. So for me, it was self-researched and self-medicated. I have been taking it since then and will not stop. This approach may not work for most, and I am not advising anyone to follow my lead. I hope you feel better soon. Story 96. I take medication, which took me a while to find ones that work for me. I left my unhealthy relationship and stopped spending time with negative people. I make myself go outside for at least 5 minutes every day unless it's raining. I also try my best to shower, eat, go to the gym, and drink water daily, but I don't beat myself up if I miss a day. I still have bad days, but for the most part, I'm doing really well. The medication helps me enough to maintain these habits, and once you are in the routine of doing those things, it becomes much easier. Story 97. I met my fiancé. Technically, the depression is probably still there below the surface, but finding the right person makes all the difference in the world. Story 98. I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and started the corresponding medication when I turned 18. My mom didn't believe in those trendy conditions. Story 99. I lost my hearing after a seizure. I fell down because I also lost most of my strength and balance. I could no longer drive or communicate effectively, which made life difficult. The medications I was taking worsened my situation. I didn't realize I was depressed. It took others to point out my issues. Since they reduced my medications and I found a solution for communication, life has improved. My doctor was pleased that I gained some weight and started smiling again. I have Bell's palsy, but it's still better than nothing. Story 100. I kept defining the problem. Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer has been very helpful in the past few weeks. I no longer needed to repeat myself, and every time a distressing thought arose, I would talk to it and gain more analysis. I still have challenging people in my life, but the depression stemmed from carrying too much emotional weight for those who should be more self-sufficient. The racing thoughts have greatly calmed down. Story 101. I hit rock bottom. During the pandemic, my ex left me completely alone. While I thought I was not going to make it, I did. The more time that went by, the more I realized that I survived that experience and that literally nothing could have been worse for me personally. Story 102. I had situational depression for years. Now I'm out of that situation, but I can slide back into anxiety and depression if I neglect my routines, such as healthy eating, exercise, sleep hygiene, staying present, engaging in hobbies, and socializing. Story 103. It was mostly about getting out of my own head and realizing that the most important thing was to do my best to reach my goals and become who I wanted to be in life. Depression brings along many unhelpful and negative thinking patterns, such as magnification and doomcasting, along with a lack of self-love. Channeling my mental and emotional energy into setting achievable goals was a game changer for me, And that's okay because I did my best. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.